Jayanga Palace Ballroom had been built for kings, then rented by people who wanted to feel like them. Crystal chandeliers poured gold over marble floors. Musicians in black played beneath a carved balcony, while cameras flashed near the charity wall. White orchids climbed from silver vases. Donor names glowed on tall digital screens, each one attached to generosity, influence, or guilt disguised as both. The invitation called it the Moonlight Patronage Gala, a fundraiser for displaced youth musicians, a celebration of art, scholarship, and cultural restoration. But Han Tae-ju knew a marriage market when he walked into one. Every elite family in Seoul seemed to have arranged its prettiest daughter near his table. Every mother smiled too early. Every father bowed with just enough warmth to suggest business, without calling it business. Every heiress had been dressed to look accidental. Tae-ju entered in a black tuxedo tailored so perfectly it made the room's luxury seem less certain of itself. He was in his late 40s, but age had not softened him. It had sharpened the silence around him. As head of Chongrian House, he controlled luxury construction, private security, art storage, debt recovery, and a philanthropic foundation with enough influence to make politicians speak gently in his presence. People called him a patron in public. In private, they lowered their voices. Korean Mafia boss. Tae-ju did not correct them. Names were only dangerous when people misunderstood what they meant. His widowed aunt, Madame Han Youngjiang, met him near the central staircase, glittering in dark blue silk and diamonds. Beside her stood Mun Gawan, the director of Chongrian Arts Trust, smiling with the careful ease of a man whose power lived inside filing cabinets. "You arrived at the perfect time," Madame Han said. "For charity or inspection?" "For continuity," she replied. A man cannot carry a house alone forever. Tae-ju looked across the ballroom, where several young women pretended not to watch him. "I did not come here to choose a wife. You came because the foundation requires public stability." Mun Gawan stepped in smoothly. Donor confidence has softened since the storage route scandal. A dignified remarriage would reassure the board. Tae-ju's eyes moved to him. Charity should not need a wife to look honest.
Madame Ansahid.
Do not be difficult. Chai Sealbin is here. Educated.
Polished.
From a family that understands discretion. Across the room, Chai Sealbin smiled as if summoned by her name. She wore pale champagne couture, diamonds at her throat, and the kind of expression that had practiced kindness in mirrors. Tae-ju looked away. He had once married without consulting power. That marriage had ended in fire, silence, and a document he still regretted signing even when he believed he had no choice.
Syra.
He did not let himself think the name often. Not because he had forgotten her, because he had not. The orchestra shifted into a softer piece. The MC stepped onto the stage, voice warm and ceremonial. "Ladies and gentlemen, before tonight's auction, Chongrian Arts Trust is honored to welcome two extraordinary scholarship honorees whose work with displaced youth musicians has already reached across continents." Polite applause rose. Tae-ju lifted a glass of water. Then the ballroom doors opened. First came two identical young men in formal black.
Tall. Composed.
One carried a slim cello bow case. The other held a leather archive folder against his side. Behind them walked a woman in emerald green couture. The room blurred. Tae-ju's glass stopped halfway to his lips. Syra Bellamy Kalu stood beneath the chandeliers as if 22 years had passed around her without permission to diminish her. Radiant caramel skin. Natural curls swept over one shoulder. Hazel brown eyes that once held laughter in his old apartment and now held a grief so disciplined it looked like grace. Tae-ju heard nothing. Not the music. Not the applause. Not Madame Han asking what was wrong. The twins stood beside Syra. His eyes. Her mouth. His stillness. Her dignity. The glass lowered in his hand. A whisper escaped before he could bury it. "Syra." Syra had not expected Han Tae-ju to be there. That was the first truth visible on her face before she corrected it. Her hand tightened once against the emerald fabric at her side. Only once. Then the public woman returned, elegant, composed, unreadable enough for a ballroom that had begun to recognize scandal before it knew the shape. Malachi noticed first. He stood to Syra's left, cello bow case in hand, his face calm but his body subtly shifting closer to her. His identical twin, Zorian, followed her gaze across the ballroom and found Taeju immediately. Neither twin looked shocked. That told Taeju something painful. They knew who he was. Chai Sealbin glided closer to Taejo's side, smiling with social curiosity sharpened at the edges. How unexpected, she murmured. Do you know her? Taeju did not answer. Cyrus' eyes met his from across the marble floor. For one suspended second, the ballroom disappeared, and Taeju saw another room. A small apartment before Chongrian House swallowed his life whole, Syra barefoot near a cracked piano, laughing because he had burned rice while pretending he could cook. Then the gala returned. Whispers moved beneath the chandeliers. Madame Han's face had gone tight. Mun Gawan's smile did not vanish, but it froze in place. The MC continued, unaware of the fault lines splitting the room. Please welcome Han Malachi and Han Zorian, founders of the Bellamy-Kalu Youth Strings Initiative, accompanied by their mother, Ms. Syra Bellamy-Kalu.
Han.
The surname struck the ballroom like a dropped blade wrapped in silk. Taeju walked forward before anyone could stop him. Chai Sealbin came with him, uninvited but determined not to be excluded from the center of attention. As he approached, the twins turned slightly toward their mother, not behind her, beside her. Protective without making her look weak. Taeju stopped 2 steps away. Syra. Her name sounded different in his mouth after 22 years. She looked at him calmly. Mr. Han. That hurt more than anger would have. Chai Sealbin gave a small laugh, light enough to seem harmless to people who did not understand cruelty. I apologize. I thought the honorees were performing tonight. Are you part of the evening's entertainment? Syra turned to her.
No, she said.
I am the mother of the honorees you are applauding. The correction landed cleanly. A few guests lowered their eyes. Taeju finally looked directly at the twins. Their resemblance was no longer a suspicion. It was a verdict. One of them, Malachi, had Taejo's exact stillness, the kind that made rooms confess discomfort around him. Zorian's gaze was sharper, archival, almost judicial. Taejo's voice came out lower than intended. Why are you here? Cyrus' face did not change. Because our sons were invited before I knew their father would be displayed as a prize. The word "R" moved through the ballroom faster than any announcement. Madame Han stepped forward sharply. Syra, this is neither the place nor the manner. Syra did not look at her. It became the place when your foundation placed my sons on the stage and your family placed their father on auction. Zorian's mouth tightened faintly. Malachi remained silent. Taeju looked between them. Sons. Not rumor. Not resemblance. Sons. His hand closed around nothing at his side. I was told. Cyrus' eyes hardened with pain. He had not earned the right to touch. So was I. The orchestra continued playing softly behind them. Photographers lowered their cameras. And in the middle of a palace ballroom built for reputation, the feared man everyone hoped to marry suddenly looked like the only person who had arrived unprepared. Taeju wanted to ask their names even though the MC had already given them. He wanted to ask how old they were, though the answer stood in their faces. He wanted to ask whether they hated him, but the ballroom was watching, and the twins were not children to be reached for just because shock had made him emotional. So he did the only thing he could do without making the moment smaller. He bowed. Not deeply. Not theatrically. Enough to acknowledge that he was meeting people who had no reason to honor him first. Malachi, he said. Zorian. Malachi nodded once. Mr.
Han.
Zorian did not nod. Mr. Han. The title cut cleanly. Taeju accepted it because he had no right to object. You knew who I was? Zorian's answer was immediate. We knew enough. Syra placed a gentle hand near his wrist. Not to silence him. To remind him of the room. Malachi spoke then, calmer. We did not come here to create a scandal. We came to accept an honor our mother told us we earned. And you did, Syra said softly. Taeju looked at her. There was no bitterness in her voice when she spoke to them. Only pride. That hurt too. Zorian adjusted the leather folder under his arm. We are not your surprise, he said. We are the years you did not investigate. A few guests audibly inhaled.
Madame Han snapped, young man.
Taeju lifted one hand without looking back.
She stopped.
His gaze stayed on Zorian. I was told your mother left Korea after signing a separation agreement. Cyrus' expression tightened. I was told you signed the order removing me from Korea. I was told the pregnancy ended during evacuation after the art storage attack. The color left Cyrus' face. Malachi turned toward her. Mother? Syra looked at Taeju as if the room had fallen away again. I was told you knew we survived and chose Chongrian House.
No.
The word left him quickly.
Too quickly to be strategy. No, Saida.
Mun Gawan stepped forward then, polished and urgent. This is clearly a painful personal misunderstanding. For the sake of the honorees and the foundation, perhaps we should move this conversation to a private room. Zorian looked at him. You would like that? Mun smiled gently. I am trying to protect everyone from spectacle. No, Zorian said. You are trying to protect the archive. Taeju slowly turned. Mun's face remained composed, but one pulse jumped near his jaw. Zorian opened the leather folder. I have spent 8 months tracing scholarship correspondence for the Bellamy Kalu Youth Strings Initiative. Chongrian Arts Trust received letters from my mother over 20 years ago. Ultrasound records. Birth notices. Relocation requests. None were delivered to Mr. Han. The ballroom shifted from gossip to danger. Taeju's voice became quiet. Why would her letters be in my foundation archive? Mun Gawan's smile finally faded. Syra looked at Zorian. You found them? Not all, he said. Enough. Taeju looked at Mun. Every donor, heiress, and family elder seemed to disappear from his awareness. Answer. Mun swallowed. Old Foundation mail was handled by several departments. Records from that period are incomplete. Zorian held up a stamped copy. This one is not. And for the first time that night, the gala stopped being a wife search. It became an investigation. MS. Baek Jiwon arrived from the archive wing in a plain black evening suit that made her look almost invisible among diamonds. That was why she was useful. Palace event archivist. Keeper of donor rolls, seating records, scholarship files, correspondence transfers, and the quiet machinery that allowed grand charity to pretend it was effortless. She looked at Taeju, then at Mun Gawan. I received Mr. Zorian Han's inquiry last month, she said. I preserved copies because the search results were irregular. Mun's voice sharpened. You had no authority to preserve restricted Foundation correspondence. Ms. Beck's expression remained mild. I had authority to preserve records connected to scholarship fraud. The word fraud changed the temperature of the ballroom. Chai Sealbin moved half a step backward. Taeju noticed. Ms. Beck opened a tablet and projected the first record onto a private donor screen near the stage. Correspondence received. Syra Bellamy Kalu. Date, 22 years earlier. Attached, medical confirmation, security relocation request, letter addressed to Han Taeju. Another, birth announcement, twin male infants, Malachi and Zorian. Another, request for emergency scholarship relocation funds, tied to a program Taeju had created after the art storage attack for families displaced by violence around Chongrian assets. Every document bore a received stamp. Every document had been redirected into Mun Gawan's restricted correspondence file. Syra stood still as the room watched her private grief become evidence. Taeju saw that and felt shame rise sharper than rage. He had built the Chongrian Arts Trust in his father's name because he once promised Syra children without safe rooms would have doors opened for them. Then that same trust became the locked door between him and his own sons. Ms. Beck continued. The emergency relocation funds were approved but never released to Ms. Bellamy Kalu. Where did they go? Taeju asked. Her eyes flicked toward Chai Sealbin. Shell Arts programs tied to the Chai Cultural Family Fund. Chai's face hardened. That is an outrageous implication. Zorian opened another folder. Not implication. Ledger. Malachi finally spoke, his voice controlled but heavy. Our mother did not disappear. Her mail was received. Her requests were stamped. Her sons were named. Someone put us in a file and closed it. Syra looked at Taeju. Her eyes shone now, but she did not cry. I did not disappear, she said. I was filed away. The sentence hurt the room because it was too precise. Taeju turned toward Mun Gawan. Open the archive. Mun stiffened. This is not proper procedure. Taeju stepped closer. Proper procedure hid my children. The orchestra had stopped playing without instruction. Even the cameras remained lowered. Taeju looked toward the palace staff. Open every Chongrian Arts Trust record connected to Saira Bellamikalu, the Bellamikalu Youth Strings Initiative, the Chai Cultural Family Fund, and Mun Gawan's restricted correspondence file. Copy them externally before anyone in this room has time to regret the truth. Mun's face drained of color. The gala had been built to present women to Taeju as possible wives. But the records were presenting something else. A past stolen by signatures. A family hidden inside charity paperwork. And 2 sons standing under chandeliers, refusing to be buried politely. Chai Sealbin recovered faster than most people in the room. That was her talent. Not innocence. Recovery. She lifted her chin and allowed a faint hurt to enter her expression, as if the scandal had happened to her rather than through her family accounts. Mr. Han, she said softly, this is clearly painful, but we should be careful. Resemblance and old letters can be emotionally persuasive. Saira looked at her. The twins did too. Taeju did not. He was reading the donor ledger Ms. Beck had placed in his hand. Chai continued, voice light enough to sound like concern. There are women who understand how to arrive at the right moment, especially when inheritance, reputation, and charity money are involved. The insult spread thinly over the ballroom. Madame Han said nothing. That silence revealed more than approval would have. Saira did not defend herself with outrage. She turned to Malachi. He opened the official music program and placed it on the nearest cocktail table. Our invitation was issued 4 months ago, he said. Mr. Han's attendance was announced 9 days ago. Zorian added a ledger beside it. Our youth strings program was evaluated by independent educators before Chongrian confirmed the honor. We did not come for his table. We came for the children our program serves. Director Osei Denkwa, who had been standing near the musicians' entrance, stepped forward. That is correct, he said. I submitted their names. Their mother asked me twice whether declining would protect them from attention. I told her the honor belonged to the work, not the room. Che's smile thinned. Zorian turned another page. But since you mentioned inheritance and charity money, your family fund received transfers from the same emergency scholarship account that never reached our mother. The donor screen updated. Figures appeared. Dates. Transfer references. Program names that sounded noble and meant nothing. Chai Cultural Family Fund. Youth Harmony Pavilion. Winter Strings Outreach. All linked to accounts that folded back toward companies controlled by Chai relatives. Che's father stood near the balcony stairs, face gray. Mun Gawan whispered something to a legal aide. Taeju saw it all. The wife's search. The pressure from his aunt. The donor confidence argument. Chai placed near his table. Mun controlling the foundation. A marriage alliance that would seal charity corruption inside respectability and keep his buried past from ever rising. He looked at Chai for the first time since Saira entered. You were not introduced to me as a wife, he said. You were introduced as a lock. Her lips parted. Mr. Han.
No.
The word was soft enough to be final. He stepped away from her in front of the entire ballroom. Then he turned toward Mun Gawan, Madame Han, and the aristocratic families who had watched the evening unfold like entertainment until the money trail touched them. I came here looking for a wife because men I trusted told me my future was empty, Taeju said. They forgot to mention they had buried my past. No one moved. Not the photographers. Not the heiresses. Not the mothers who had dressed their daughters for strategy. Taeju placed the donor ledger beside the gala wife candidate seating ribbon at his table. 2 symbols of the same lie. Saira watched him. There was no forgiveness in her face. But there was a tension. That was more than he deserved. Malachi and Zorian stood on either side of their mother beneath the chandeliers, not waiting to be claimed, not begging to be believed. The palace ballroom had gathered to help Han Taeju choose a wife. Instead, it had been forced to meet the family his own foundation helped erase. For a long moment, no one knew whether the gala should continue. The donor screens still glowed with corrupted transfers. Mun Gawan stood beside it like a man whose shadow had finally learned to speak. Chai Sealban's family avoided looking at the ledger. Madame Han Youngjiang's face remained rigid, as if dignity could hold a collapsing room upright. Then the orchestra resumed. Softly at first. One violin, then cello. Then the rest followed because musicians were trained to continue when rich people lost control. Malachi looked toward the stage. He was scheduled to perform. Zorian stood beside him, jaw tight, leather folder still in hand. Syra watched both sons with the expression of a mother asking silently whether pride was worth the pain.
"We can leave," she said.
Malachi shook his head.
"No."
Zorian looked across the ballroom at the families who had whispered about them as if their lives were entertainment. They do not get to steal the work too. So the twins walked to the stage. Not as Han Taiju's sons. Not as scandal. As honorees. Malachi lifted his cello. Zorian raised his violin. The ballroom quieted. Then they played. The melody began gently, almost like a lullaby heard through a closed door. Taeju felt the sound before he understood it. A slow phrase. A turn in the notes. A memory hidden inside music. His breath caught. Years ago, in a small apartment before Chongrian House became a cage, he had played that melody for Syra on an old piano with one broken key. She had laughed when he missed the ending, then changed it into something softer. Now his sons were playing it beneath palace chandeliers. Syra had kept the song. Not for him.
For them.
The music opened old rooms inside him.
Syra barefoot beside a piano.
Her hand resting on her stomach. His promise to build a foundation for children with no safe place to learn. The art storage attack.
Smoke.
Security men shouting. A signed separation paper placed beside his hospital bed. Silence turning into certainty because no one challenged it. The final note hung in the ballroom. No one clapped immediately. They were too aware that they had heard something more intimate than a performance. Taeju whispered, barely audible. She kept the song. Syra heard him, but she did not turn. Director Osei Dankwa stepped onto the stage after the twins lowered their instruments. He was a dignified Ghanaian Korean arts educator in a dark formal suit, his voice calm enough to command the room without raising it. "I was asked tonight to speak about youth arts mentorship," he said. "But it seems impossible to honor these young men without honoring the woman who made sure they reached this stage." Cyrus' eyes lowered. Osei continued. "I met Syra Bellamikalu, when her sons were small. She was working 2 jobs and still teaching them discipline, music, and grace. She never asked me to help them hate anyone." Taeju stood still near the donor screen. Osei looked directly at him. "She did not raise them to hate an absent man. She raised them to survive the absence." The words moved through the ballroom with quiet force. Mun Gawan tried to interrupt. "This is no longer appropriate gala programming." Ms. Beck Jaiwan stepped forward from the archive table. Neither was restricted correspondence fraud. A few guests gasped. She placed delivery chain documents beside Zorian's folder. These records confirm that Director Dankwa assisted with 3 international correspondence packets sent to Chongrian Arts Trust. All were received. All were routed into Mun Gawan's restricted file. Taeju turned to Syra. "Why did you stop trying?" Syra's expression did not accuse him. "That made it worse. Because every message I sent came back as silence," she said. "And silence eventually becomes an answer." Taeju had no defense. Not one that could survive her restraint. Mun's phone was taken by legal security. His access cards were frozen. His assistant tried to slip away and was stopped near the corridor. The charity gala had become an audit. But beneath the ledgers and evidence, one truth remained unbearable. Syra had tried. He had not known. Then he had stopped asking. Taeju asked to speak with the twins. Not in a private room. Malachi refused before Taeju finished the request. Zorian said, "We are not being taken somewhere unseen so the room can imagine reconciliation."
Taeju accepted that.
They agreed to the side balcony overlooking the ballroom garden, within sight of Syra, Director Dankwa, and Ms. Beck. The night air was cool against Taeju's face. For the first time all evening, no chandelier softened the truth. He faced the twins. "I owe you answers." Zorian's voice was sharp. "You owe our mother more." Yes, Taeju said. But I will begin where I am allowed. Malachi studied him. You do not get to call us sons before you have answered as a man. The sentence landed exactly where it was meant to. Taeju nodded. I was told your mother signed the separation agreement. I was told the pregnancy ended during the evacuation. I was told she accepted relocation funds and wanted no contact. I believed it because grief made cowardice look like survival. Neither twin softened. Good, Taeju thought. He did not deserve easy mercy. Zorian asked, Did you search? Taeju looked at him. Not enough. Did you question the signatures? Not enough. Did you hate her because it was easier than admitting you had been left helpless? Taeju closed his eyes once. Yes. Malachi looked toward the ballroom where Syra stood beneath emerald light. She never used you as a villain in her house. I know that now. No, Malachi said quietly. You know the fact. You do not know what it cost her. Taeju bowed his head. Then tell me the conditions. Zorian opened the folder. Cyrus' name publicly cleared. Foundation corruption investigated. Stolen scholarship, funds restored. No media claim over us. No forced surname.
No sudden inheritance spectacle.
No private meetings without consent. Contact begins only when we agree. Taeju answered without hesitation. Yes. Malachi watched him carefully. No speech.
No.
No demand.
No.
No asking us to heal you? Taeju's voice lowered. I will not ask you to carry my regret as proof that I changed. For the first time, Zorian's expression shifted. Not forgiveness, but recognition that the apology had not tried to steal the room. When Taeju returned to the ballroom, Madame Han was waiting. She had recovered her public face, but not her patience. This scandal can still be controlled, she said. The family still needs stability. You still need a wife. The word wife sounded absurd now. Taeju looked across the room at Syra. Guests noticed. They expected drama. A declaration.
A demand.
A public reclaiming. Something powerful men did when they confused remorse with ownership. Taeju did none of it. I did not lose a wife tonight, he said. I found the truth of how badly I failed one. The room went silent. Cyrus' eyes lifted to his. He did not step toward her. He did not ask her to return. He did not make her grief part of his redemption. He turned to the gala table where a ribbon marked the arranged seating for wife candidates. Chai Sealbin's name sat at the top, printed in gold. Taeju removed the ribbon and placed it beside the corrupted donor ledger. These belong together, he said. Both were presented as my future by people hiding my past. Chai Sealbin left before photographers could find her face. Her family accounts were frozen pending audit. Mun Gawan was escorted away by legal security, still insisting procedure had been misunderstood. Madame Han stood motionless, realizing the marriage plan had not failed because Syra returned. It had failed because the truth did. Taeju faced the ballroom. All marriage discussions end tonight. Chongrian Arts Trust will be suspended pending independent restructuring. Every stolen scholarship fund will be restored. Then he looked at the twins. No statement will be made about Malachi or Zorian without their consent. Finally, he looked at Syra. And no woman in this room will be used to clean a man's reputation. Syra did not smile, but she did not look away. Months later, Chongrian Arts Trust no longer looked like a trophy polished for donors. It had an independent board, public ledgers, restored scholarship funds, a corrected record showing that Syra Bellamikalu had contacted the foundation for years. The Chai family was removed from all programs. Mun Gawan faced prosecution. Ms. Beck Jaiwan became Archive Compliance Director. Director Osei Dangwa helped expand the Youth Strings initiative without allowing the twins' private lives to become publicity material. And Han Taeju learned distance. He sat through meetings without demanding closeness. He wrote apologies without asking for replies. He funded the restored programs without placing his name over theirs. He watched Malachi and Zorian become known for their work, not for being found beneath a chandelier. The next recital was smaller. No aristocratic marriage market. No wife candidates.
No gold-seating ribbon.
Just young musicians, families, teachers, and a room where charity finally resembled its name. Syra arrived in emerald again. Not the same gown. The same color. This time, no one ambushed her with history. Taeju sat one row behind her, not beside her. That was the distance she had chosen, and he honored it. Malachi performed first. Zorian followed. The music was brighter this time. Afterward, Taeju waited near the exit, without blocking the path. The twins approached with Syra between them. Malachi nodded first. Small, controlled, but real. Then Zorian looked at him and said, "You may walk with us to the car." Taeju understood the size of that permission. He did not thank them too loudly. He simply nodded. "I would be honored." They walked together through the quiet hallway. Not healed, not complete, but no longer buried. Han Taeju had come to the palace ballroom looking for a wife because powerful men told him his future needed a woman beside him. But beneath the chandeliers, he mistakenly found the ex-wife he had failed. The twins he never knew had been kept from him, and the truth that before he could ask anyone to stand beside him, he first had to answer for the years he left behind.